All right, I'm very excited to be joined by a very special guest today, another coach from your Philadelphia Stars, Coach Brandon Maguire, the defensive line coach. He's a young and upcoming professional coach, getting his first opportunity in the USFL after coaching many years at the college level. Coach, thank you for joining me, and how are you doing this morning?
Doing good. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So real quick, I wanted to start way back at the beginning of your career in terms of a coach. And maybe I want to double check some of the years I have here with you, but you actually got involved in coaching while you were still playing as a wide receiver, correct?
Correct. I was at the University of Montana, and when I was there, I had 4 torn labrums, so went through a lot of surgeries. And probably after my second one, my receiver coach, Shallon Baker, I actually bumped into him out one night and had a conversation. He was really concerned that he was going to lose me, and I was thinking about leaving. And he told me to stop by and said that him and Robin Pflugrad wanted to talk to me in the morning. So I popped in the morning. They asked me to stick around and be a part of the coaching. And I hadn't thought about leaving. It wasn't on my mind, but for them to open the door to start the coaching process is what really got me into this.
Interesting. So was coaching something that you always kind of thought you would be involved in, or was it something that you had never even really considered prior to that?
I hadn't considered coaching until college. Really thought I was going to go do like the FBI police thing. I got my undergrad in criminology, and then really I've always loved sports. So then being around the coaching aspect of it and being in the offices as a game plan, it really took off from there. That's where it kind of stuck.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about your criminology degree and what you kind of had planned with that, but you kind of answered my question for me there.
Yep.
So obviously we talked about it very briefly there, but you were a college receiver and you've spent time coaching several positions. However, you have not coached the wide receiver position overall. So how difficult is it to coach a position that you've never actually physically played?
I think there's a lot of carryover. I wouldn't say it's difficult. You can make it hard on yourself if you don't research it, right, and try and learn. But even if you played the position, you got to do the professional development. You have to have a growth mindset and always be looking at trying to figure out what's up and coming, a better way to do things. So I think having not played the position or even played defense growing up, because I didn't play defense in high school. It's kind of it's a fear, right? Like you don't want to go out there and just put a terrible product out there because that's a reflection of you. So really, I think it put me in a position where I really had to study and make sure that I knew what I was doing for the team, but also for the players too. Because in college, you want to make sure those guys are getting the best coaching they can get. And same goes for professional ball as well. So, yeah, that answers the question there.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always kind of wondered because you always notice coaches that'll, you'll play defensive back in college like Mike Riley, and then you'll end up as an offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach. And it's like, I just can't put myself in that position to teach a position that I've never played. But again, I'm not a coach. So different life, I can imagine. So obviously you got involved with coaching at a very young age. How long do you see yourself coaching? Is this something you see yourself doing forever, or is it something where you've got an expiration date on your coaching career?
I think there's an expiration date, right? And it adjusts with life events and what happens. You see some guys that are coaching and you don't want to take away from them, but coaching into their late 70s, if you're having fun doing it, good. But I think there will be a point in my life where hopefully there's family and things that come ahead of the long days, late nights, where you do end up hanging it up. Right now, though, in the foreseeable future, coaching is going to be where I'm heading.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
31 years old. Yep.
So you got a long career ahead of you for sure.
Yeah, at least 20 more years minimum, at least.
Very nice. Very nice. So in 2012, you actually move on from your alma mater and start coaching with Langston University as a tight ends coach. This was your first time where you were listed as a positions coach officially. During your time at Langston, you coached all conference tight end Tommy Jones. How were you able to help Jones to this honor, even though you're basically kind of learning how to coach tight ends as you went?
Tommy had unbelievable athleticism, and my time at Langston, really that entire group, we had a really talented players, and there I was really learning. I think I'm going to rewind here real quick just to give everyone a kind of an idea of where I was at in my coaching career. Okay. I had my fourth shoulder surgery, and I would have had to take a medical red shirt, miss a whole year, and then come back. So it'd been 2 years at Montana. So I started applying for GA jobs late, like probably in April. Langston's the only one that reaches out. And then late, Southwest Minnesota State, I did an interview with them. And I remember the head coach asking me, and this was for wide receivers. The head coach asked me, what's your favorite run scheme? And I said power. And at the time, we had done quite a bit of that at Montana with Hauk, and carried that over with Pflugrad and Delaney as well. But I said power, and they said, can you draw up power? And I talked to my position coach. He said, if you don't know the answer, don't try and don't fake it, because they'll see right through that. And I said, nope, can't tell. Couldn't tell you how to block it. Couldn't tell you how to ID it, nothing. And I said, but I like the run scheme. It works well for us. And I didn't get that job. So I go down to Langston. I'm coaching tight ends where you have to know how to block the run schemes and ID things. And Paul On was the O-line coach. And he was an old Pat Hill guy at Fresno State. And so that style of coaching, I wouldn't say confrontational, but if you didn't know what you were doing, right, like you were going to get called out on it. So Paul introduced me really quick to A, how to ID things, B, how to carry yourself and learn and understand things and coach. So to get back to Tommy, for a long, I'd say for almost all of fall camp, because I didn't get down there till July, I was learning how to, I guess, coach him and teach him the way that you needed to coach that position. The receiving stuff was great. Like I could teach him how to catch the ball. But what Tommy did really well was diving headfirst into the run blocking aspect of it. Because coming out of the D2 or JC that he transferred from, I forgot where it was, he was more of a big receiver at about 6'4", like 240, and they split him out a lot. He didn't block a lot, and we asked him to do a lot of blocking. And at the end of the thing, he ended up being, I believe, an HBCU All-American. So that was all on him and his work ethic.
Very nice. Definitely is a two-person job anytime you see success from a player. I'd say, at least two people, if not more, with the coach and the player himself. So after just one season at Langston, you end up returning to Montana. This time you're with Montana Tech, correct?
Yep, I was. Things didn't end up working out at Langston. I was down there and I actually failed out of all of my grad classes. There's a variety of reasons there. I did end up getting a master's later on, so I stuck to it. But I failed out of all the classes at Langston, so I couldn't stick around and do another year as a GA there. And a guy that GA'd for my head coach at Montana, Pete Sturbick, called me up. And he's now at Colorado Mines doing a really good job. I think they're the top offense this year in Division II football. But he called me up to be running backs coach and tight ends coach at Montana Tech. And packed my stuff up, went back into Butte, America, and coached at Montana Tech with a lot of young guys. It was a really good learning experience. But, man, really different world, but nice to be back in Montana for that 6 months that I was there.
Absolutely. So one of the players that I noticed kind of stuck out to me when I was looking back at your time there was Pat Hansen, an amazing running back. How tempting is it with players like, Pat Hansen, Tommy Jones, obviously a little bit further back in your career, but how tempting is it to go back and sign players you've coached at the collegiate level?
It's tempting. I think the one thing that I noticed now is I thought we had a really good idea of what a professional player looked like at even when I was at Northern Colorado and at Holy Cross, even. And then until you see it live, right? Like it's the defensive line group that I walked in with last year. You sit there and you take a look back and you say, okay, maybe, maybe the guys I've had in the past weren't able to. I think having an opportunity in a spring league, probably when Tommy and Pat were coming out, those guys, I think, on the flip side of that, would have really benefited from having an alternative football option. Tommy ended up going down to, I think, Brazil and playing down there, or he was playing in South America somewhere, and he had a nice little career. And then Pat, I mean, Montana Tech's a petroleum engineering place. I mean, you're going to come out of there making some pretty good money. And I think Pat got right into that, and he's been doing a great job. I have done a terrible job staying in touch with really both of those guys. Talked with Tommy a little more, but I think I checked in on Pat social media the other day, and it looks like he's having a good life. So that's one thing as I grow as a coach, I need to do a better job of, is staying in touch with these guys that have really sacrificed so much, right, for my benefit as well as the team and the school that they're a part of.
Hey, I think that's something that all of us can do a better job of. I mean, as life goes on, we kind of lose touch with people. So I can only imagine it's on a grander scale with coaches who are seeing 50, 60, 70 different players every season, So I can imagine it's difficult for sure. During your time at Montana Tech, you experienced what I believe were, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first losing seasons as a coach of your career. What did you take away from your first two seasons that helped the team find success in your third season?
Yeah. That I wouldn't say that at Montana Tech was a losing season. That was far worse. We got our teeth kicked in. We weren't good, and it was more of a youth thing because I left. Hell, maybe I was the problem. I left in 2014, right after I was there for one season. And those same guys that were freshmen, sophomores, you go back and look, Chuck Morrell was the head coach. Pete stayed around as the OC as well. They went on to win, I think, 3 straight conference championships and make it the NAIA playoffs for 3 straight years. And then Chuck's now at the University of Washington coaching linebackers. Pete's at Colorado Mines leading one of the top offenses. So it wasn't that we weren't good schematically, because they didn't change really anything. It was just a youth thing. So for me, it was leaving is when I went to Northern Colorado, I wanted to be really wanted to make it to the highest level that I could. And I felt that I went to Northern Colorado for free. I was a volunteer initially. I went there for a chance to learn, and it was really taking the risk. Like the first 2 jobs hadn't been what I thought coaching would be, and not from anything that those guys had done. Just I was expecting more, right? Coming from Montana, and so that was kind of like, well, let's see if this is it, right? See if this is what you want to do. So that was how I ended up in Northern Colorado. And, I don't know if you take anything from – you're always learning whether it's what to do or what not to do. Looking back now there's things I can take from that. But I didn't know enough at the time to take lessons from those places to be like, oh, yeah, this is – we can't do this again. This is going to help me at my next job. I don't think I had enough football coaching knowledge to know in that moment. Now looking back on it, it helps. Absolutely.
Interesting. So this wasn't an initial question on my list, but do you think the way that you came up in coaching with a relatively early start kind of accelerated your career to the point that you're at now because you were able to go through those growing pains a lot earlier in life?
No and yes. a lot of when you talk to guys that want to get into coaching, that everyone says start as high as you can, and there's some merit to that because it's always hard to climb. I think as long as you work hard, though, you're going to have plenty of opportunities. For me, I encourage guys to go to lower levels, Division II, and NAIA Division III if it's the right fit, because most of the time you get your own room. The higher level you go, you film breakdown, you don't get to lead your own room, you don't actually get to coach, and there's a lot of things you have to learn as a coach. Your first few years in a classroom, teaching is huge. It's a critical part of the game. So having been at NAIA level, when I was at Langston and Montana Tech, right, you're painting the fields, you're calling ahead for hotels, you're the film guy also. So there's always things to be doing. You're the strength coach. And that is what really taught me more, especially with time management and efficiency with teaching, with your time, and communication. There's just so much I learned that I think accelerated my growth as a coach, having been at those levels and those places with limited resources. And you can't make that an excuse, right? Like someone's going to find a way. They've been doing it before you got there. So you got to keep it rolling.
I like how you put that because I have a feeling that has come in handy since you entered the USFL.
100%. It's, you don't have time to complain about things. You just got to find a way to get it done. So I think our staff does a really good job of that.
100%. I mean, not to steal Coach Miller's words, but I believe he said you're not always going to have, every bell and every whistle that you might want. You're going to have to take the pieces that you have and make do with what you've got, which you guys did very, very well this past season. So we got one more question about your college career. You ended up sticking with UNC for many years, coaching several positions. Despite moving around and coaching multiple position groups, it seemed like every position group you had your hand in kind of had a guy who would excel that season. First it was Kiefer Morris with logging 9 sacks. Then you move over to coach running backs, and 2 of your guys collect 289 yards in a game, and first 2 backs to go over 100 yards in a game in several years. How is it that you're able to constantly find a way to help these players take their game to the next level, no matter what position you're coaching?
They always had the talent. The guys that coached them beforehand did a really good job of giving them a good platform. It's not like they weren't coached well, right? Kiefer was ready to go. With him, it's finding what guys need to play confidently. I inherited Kiefer at a time where he was growing into really himself, right? He was very comfortable with who he was. He had put on 50 pounds or some crazy number like that coming out of high school. And he was ready to kind of explode. So I inherited Kiefer at a really good time. And again, it's the work that he had done. It's, for me, with a lot of these guys, I still have the same philosophy is like you can teach them all the pass rush moves, the bells and whistles, and harp on technique, and you have to do that. But at the end of the day, when they line up, they need to know what they're doing, and they have to be able to execute at full speed. So that, I think, is one thing that the staffs that I've been a part of have done a really good job of. We can do all these new schemes. We can try all these different techniques. We can give them a whole array of tools to use, but it's narrowing down and focusing on what they know and what they execute, and just making sure that it is just a reaction at that point, right? Like they just handle it as it comes to them instead of thinking. You got to eliminate thinking from the vocabulary when they're playing out there.
That's a great point. Once again, for anybody who's just tuning in with us, we are speaking with Brandon Maguire, the defensive line coach for the Philadelphia Stars. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. All right, so from UNC, you end up going right into the USFL. In football, sometimes it's more about who you know than what you know to get to your next position. So who or what led you to the USFL under Bart Andrews? Does it tie back to Montana at all?
It does. 2009, I report to Montana, and I was not even a preferred walk-on. I started when school started. So that first fall, I was running around spotting the ball, and another guy on the second floor at Aber Hall in Missoula showed up same time, and he was not a preferred walk-on. He was a scholarship guy, but his name was Travis Andrus, and we lived on the same floor. Ended up being roommates sophomore and junior year. Played football together, and ended up being Bart's son. So when I got let go at Northern Colorado with a coaching change, which ended up being one of the best things that could have happened to me. I was getting paid by them still. So I reached out to Bart, who was in XFL at the time in 2020, coaching Team 9, and said, hey, is there, do you need any help down there? And he said, yeah, I can't pay you, but if you want to come down. So I went down there for 2 weeks and actually coached D-line with him. And really good experience. And I went to Holy Cross, and I was on vacation in the summer. This was, I think, 2 years later. I'm on vacation. I'm in Hawaii, and I get a phone call from Jeff Reinbold, and he asked if I wanted to be a GA at Rice for special teams. I said, no, my clock was up. He said, okay, well, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm hanging out in Hawaii. And he said, let me put you on the phone. I got someone that wants to talk to you. And it was Bart again. And he said, hey, so can you come to Houston for, I think it was 4 weeks? I said, yeah, sure, why not? So went down there and coached in the TSL for 4 weeks in Houston before reporting back to Holy Cross, and really got to thank Bob Chesney and Chris Smith and Justin Roper at Holy Cross for allowing me to do that, because at the time I was a quality control guy at Holy Cross, and there's a lot going on in the summer in college sports with visits and recruiting and camps. So then getting ready for the next season, because that was July that I got back there. July is a busy month for the college guys, especially QCs and GAs. And then after that, did my year at Holy Cross in 2021, and the USFL started up, and Bart gave me a call. And one thing that Bart and Brad are they stick to it. They're very loyal people. And you talk about it's who you know, but in the coaching world, especially guys like Bart, Brad, Martin, we got Glenn Smith on staff, Marcel, right? There's a lot of guys. Those guys have been in coaching for a long time, so they know a lot of people. There's a lot of people that they could be loyal to. There's a lot of guys with really good resumes that they could bring in to coach the position. So for them to call me, it's a testament to them to give me that opportunity too. A lot of times you see guys that will find all kinds of reasons to not hire somebody, whether it's a lack of experience, whether it's you haven't recruited an area, whether it's you never played the position, right? You see it all the time, guys missing out on opportunities because of excuses. And that wasn't something that Bart and Brad did in my case.
I love to hear that. I mean, I was not aware of the fact that you had coached with the Spring League. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because obviously that puts you in touch with not only Bart Andrews, but Brad Miller as well. So very interesting, very interesting. And that kind of answers my next question. But prior to your involvement with the Spring League, I guess, did you watch alternative football leagues like the UFL, the AAF, XFL 2020, maybe even the Arena Football League?
Didn't watch Arena, mainly because I didn't it's a faster game. There's rules I didn't understand there. So it's harder for me to get my head around. There's nothing wrong with that league, and it's actually but kept a lot of careers going, right, and giving them new opportunities. Watched the UFL because Bart was coaching that one, and Travis was actually coaching, I think, running backs, or he was helping out maybe as a QC with special teams on that. So I was watching that when I was still in school, and he was helping out in that league. And then, I think it goes for anybody watching this. We talked about earlier, you're a football guy. I'm a football guy. There's a lot of football people out there. If there's football on TV at any time of the year, especially during baseball season, I'm probably going to put it on. So yeah, I've watched a lot of football don't really care what league it's in. If there's football on TV, we're going to watch it.
I love that. Yeah, and obviously, like you said, Bart Andrews was the head coach and offensive coordinator at one point for the Omaha Nighthawks of the UFL. So really good reason to watch them for sure. So Philly Insider Podcast, a friend of mine, Hunter Doyle, is tuning in. He's big Philadelphia fan, obviously. He says, "Go Stars." Runs a Facebook group about the Philadelphia Stars, actually. So definitely check that out if you're a Stars fan. So you coached a player, Adam Rodriguez, this past season to 9 sacks, and he, prior to this, was primarily a backup in the spring league. For a player like this, I mean, do you take pride in seeing his accomplishments on the field, or is it simply just as a coach, just business as usual for you?
You take pride in them, I guess, having the confidence and playing up to their potential, right? So you talked about Adam wasn't really a starter in the spring league, and it went back to the conversation that me and you were having earlier with guys can get cut for a variety of reasons or not play for a variety of reasons at college and pro ball. It's all about fit and timing. And Adam may not have excelled up to his potential in the spring league for whatever reason, but he was very productive there. You go back to his time at Weber State, and he had 3 sacks, might have been 4. He'll correct me via text message, I'm sure, when I'm wrong here, against my alma mater, Montana, in a playoff game, right? And put up huge numbers at Weber State, was always productive, and it was year over year, so sustained success. When we had him, when he reported, and he might not like me telling this story, so sorry, Adam, but when he reported that first week or two, he had a lot going on in his life with just had his new father, right? Just had his son, and it's a lot for guys to get down there and know that there's a lot riding on their careers, right? It's no longer just like college, right? They got families to support and a lot of other things going on. And I'd say for the first week or two, he was really he was thinking too much. So the success he had this year is really he settled in, gained a lot of confidence, and that was cool to see because it was the growth of being able to let things go. And Adam wants everything to be right. He's a great, gonna be a great dad, great family man, because he wants everything to be perfect. He wants people to be happy, and he just wants to make sure everything is done right. So Adam's success this year is 100% on his work ethic. You watch the tape, he flies around. But it's also, a team thing too. You look at anytime you got Channing Stribling back there, Cody Brown, Ladarius Wiley, the list goes on. Amani Dennis from the back end to be covering guys, right? Because you need time to get to the quarterback too. So if they're throwing quick game and getting that ball out in 1.5, 2 seconds, it's hard to get sacked. So really, it was just a team effort. Obviously, as a coach, you'd like to think that, that was all me, but I'm willing to bet if you took me out of the equation and plugged any other defensive line coach in, those guys are still going to play hard. And my job is just to make sure they're playing confidently and playing fast. So, long answer there, but.
That's perfectly okay, man. I got nothing but time, and I love hearing the detailed answers from coaches because you get a different insight. I talk to a lot of players, and they have a certain perspective on things, but getting a coach's insight is a totally different ballgame. So I love hearing your side of things and hearing your perspective on how he was able to succeed this past season. Obviously, if you haven't checked out the interview, Adam Rodriguez was recently on the channel. Was very lucky to have him on, very lucky to have Brandon on as well. So this seems like a great time to play some of your playoff highlights from the Stars. So for anybody who has not checked out a USFL game, definitely pay attention close to this because it's great gameplay. and definitely well worth your while to watch. I got a couple more comments rolling in from Hunter. Adam was a beast. Yes, he was. And then he's got a good question for you. What's your best advice for getting started in the coaching or scouting recruiting industry?
Best advice. It goes back to it's all about who you know, right? So you got to find a way to introduce yourself to people. Find a way to, if it's professional things you want to get into, find a way to get to the Senior Bowl, get to those Shrine games, and get around the scouts, and really just stay in contact with them. Find out if there's ways to do volunteer stuff for a week or two, and really it's practicing your craft too. So evaluating a bunch of guys. I know one thing that's gotten guys into the scouting thing is they do like what we're doing here, that Sam's got going, but the reviews, right? The scouting reports on upcoming draft guys. But with scouting and with coaching, one thing that everyone has to understand is you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of time, and the pay is not going to be good. If you're willing to give up a lot of time and probably a lot of money compared to your other job, you'll be able to get in as long as you work hard. Because once you're in, if you're working hard, you climb quickly.
Yeah, full disclosure, I've actually had a couple offers to work as a scout or coach, agent, stuff like that, and it's like you said, it's not a fit for a lot of people. I'm at a position where I've got a mortgage, I've got a career. This is a lot of fun, but it's not something that I can definitely jump full feet in. So Hunter, if it's something that you're really serious about, shoot me a DM. I'll try and put you in touch with some people that might be interested in bringing you on as an intern or helping you out somehow.
You said it was Hunter that asked that question, right?
Yeah, Hunter Doyle.
Hunter, the other thing I would say is if it's coaching you want to get into, try out the high school level first, because there's still that's a lot of time and hours that those guys put in, a lot of hands-on coaching, but that's not an easy route ever. And if you do the high school thing for a year or two and it's something you want to do, you realize this is the passion that you have, then start working on getting into the college game and professional game. But I think the high school level is not something to turn your back on and think you're too good for. Really, for any coach out there, those guys put in a lot of work, and it's a lot of thankless hours at the high school level, but they're doing a lot of good stuff.
Absolutely. He also says nice hoodie. In case you didn't catch it, I'm wearing a Super Bowl champions hoodie from 2017 because we didn't win this year, unfortunately.
No, I was just saying that might have been a little premature to buy that one, but
yeah. Unfortunately, this is from a couple years ago. I've been a fan since 2001. It's been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. So he says, one more thing. Can you speak a bit to teaching run fits and gap schemes you've coached on the different teams you've been a part of?
Yeah, that's everything ties together. So one thing you got to look at is the run fits. You can't just draw some stuff up there, and we're going to get into this, I think, here in a little bit with Sam too. If 3x1, there's issues for everything. So run fit wise, you just have to make sure that you got a guy for every gap in layman's terms, right? You draw up the 5 offensive linemen, and you got 6 gaps, right? So you got to make sure that all those gaps are accounted for in just a traditional spread set. And so when you get into this you could talk about this stuff for a long time. It's a pretty complex answer. So, but when you get into it, you just have to make sure it all marries together. You can't just throw something on the wall and say, well, what if we just do this and roll with it? It might work against one formation and one specific run scheme, but when you draw something up, it has to fit to that formation and that personnel for 3x1, 2x2, 4x1. If they go to empty, what are we going to check to? If they get in unbalanced, what if they do a motion? What if they shift? So the best guys that I've been around keep things relatively simple, but there's a lot of carryover where same as is one way to put it, where it applies for everything. And it gets you out of tough situations that, you can get. I think Brad said that he's got something like over 1,000 different things drawn up in his computer on his master playbook. If you looked at what we're doing, there's definitely not 1,000. There's definitely not 100 different things. There's maybe 50. I'd probably even err on 30 different things that we do. And if you looked at the 80% of what we do, that's probably 10 different things, right, that we're really good at and we work on the most. So there's a long conversation to be had there. Maybe if we connect, I can talk to you more about run fits, gap scheme, all of that.
Yeah, that's something that could be a whole hour-long interview in itself, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, to carry on that subject, like you mentioned, we do have one question for you that kind of is similar to this. You guys run a wide 9 scheme, and this is something that I've spoken about a lot. My articles on USFLnewshub.com. It's a scheme that's famous in Philadelphia, quite frankly. I mean, from the legend Jim Johnson back in the day, he incorporated this front with guys like Trent Cole, Javon Curse, Hugh Douglas, and you guys have continued it with guys like Adam Rodriguez. This season, you'll have Darius Hodge, several other players as well. I mean, I don't want to single anybody out there, but how is it different based on the wide 9 front versus a regular 4-3 base defense that most teams run?
The thing, and I think you're seeing it a lot more, it's not as much as a wide 9. To me, it's not as much of a wide 9 front as it is an attack front. And really, my background in that comes from Jim Washburn, who his son coaches actually right now for Philadelphia. But he was in Tennessee with Bart for a long time with the Titans. I think he did 20 years there. But everything that we do is going forward, and it's not controlling the line of scrimmage. It's playing on the other side of it. So, yeah, we widen out and we want to cause disruption in the backfield with how we're playing. That makes things hard on the second and third level, especially if we're really unsound in our technique up front. But I like it because it's aggressive, right? Solving problems with aggression, and you don't want to. You see a lot of guys, and I don't believe in it. A lot of guys sitting there and they just sit at the line of scrimmage and they do the read stance and they just catch double teams, and that's fine. That works for them. I don't know it well enough to say that it's wrong. There's a million ways to skin a cat, but I like to be aggressive, whether it's on the offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball. So it just kind of fits me, and it fits Coach Miller especially, which is what he came from. That's what he ran in the CFL. It's what he's been a part of in the NFL. So it's a comfort level for us defensively as a staff.
That makes perfect sense, and I'm glad you mentioned that Washburn his father is coaching in the NFL with the Eagles, because I believe he coaches defensive line actually.
Yep, I think he has the defensive ends and outside linebackers, I believe. But yeah, funny story how I got connected with him. He called me. He'd been training Ralph Hawley, one of our defensive tackles, for last year's draft prep, and said, "You really should call this guy." I wasn't quite sure. Like, I knew who he was, and I went to Bart, knowing that he coached with Bart, and he said, "If Jim Washburn says that the guy can play defensive line, you take him." Like, Jim Washburn knows defensive line. So I signed the guy. And I think the last 8 weeks down there, Jim called me once a week. We talked for about an hour, and we've stayed in touch since. And he's been phenomenal in terms of mentoring me. And anyone that knows Jim knows he's going to tell you how he sees it. And it's been been really good for me to have conversations with him about defensive line play.
That's amazing. Talk about a resource for you as a coach to kind of develop and learn more about the position. I mean, he's coached defensive line pass rushers for a long, long time. So definitely
Long time. Yeah, very, very lucky.
Exactly. Hunter's got one more question for you. Have gap and a half defenses found their way into the spring leagues?
Gap and a half, 2-gap, sound, unsound gap defenses have found their way not only into the spring leagues, but also into college sports. So, and the NFL. I mean, look, as long as you know what your weaknesses are in any call, right? You can make any defense work as long as you know what the weaknesses are and you have a way to fix it. Now, you don't want to be exposing yourself in too many different areas, and that's not a way you really want to make a living. But yeah, that a little bit of everything's found its way, and people trying to find new ways to do things and catch people off guard, and try and just get one more possession.
Absolutely. I mean, this may not be the NFL, but I believe every football league is a little bit of a copycat league. If it works, why not try it, right?
No doubt. You're seeing it in the college game right now, or sorry, in the NFL. They're copying the college game with the Q run game. They're slower adapting to it, but you watch what Jalen Hurts is doing in the run game, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. There's even Daniel Jones. It's not just a zone read anymore. It's +1 run game, which is brutal defensively to try and account for. So it's slowly making its way in the NFL game. And I think you're just going to start seeing a lot more of it, and something that makes it a real headache for defensive guys.
Absolutely. There's a couple USFL teams I expect to run a lot of that this season. One team you faced twice this season, quite in particular. So New Jersey Generals should be interesting to face this year, I'm sure.
No doubt.
So obviously there's a pretty good story that we told with Adam Rodriguez that you actually kind of pounded the table for him to come to Philadelphia and play with the Stars. What led you to champion Rodriguez coming with you?
I think I took him in the supplemental draft, right? Yeah,
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure I did. The FCS is a level that gets overlooked a lot. If I'm being 100% honest, I did not remember him in the spring league. But I coached against him when I was at Northern Colorado. Knew he was a problem there. And then when I called Grant Duff was his position coach. When I called Grant Duff, and I think he's the defensive coordinator now at Weber State, but I asked him about him. I said, hey, I'm looking at Adam. I know what he can do on the field. Just want to get like your feedback on Adam and your thoughts on him. And he couldn't have given a better review in terms of, he said, I would let him marry my daughter. And he said, you won't find a better person, a harder worker, or a tougher person. And that's everything you're looking for from a football standpoint, but also a character standpoint when you bring guys in. And especially with a 40-man roster, active roster, right? Like toughness has to be a thing because you're playing special teams, you're playing defense. So toughness, both mental and physical, are things you have to have, especially in 10-game seasons with no bye weeks. So that was what made me want to take Adam, and you could see the potential in there. He was listed as a fullback and an edge, so I knew no one else was going to take him in that draft, and I was very happy when we were able to pick him up.
It's actually quite ironic that you mentioned the fact that he's listed as a fullback and an edge. Seattle, he said, actually had him work out and run we're going to have him run H-back routes. So, 6'3", 240, pretty agile guy. I mean, that versatility is something that can be an asset in a spring league, like you talked about, 40-man rosters. I'm shocked nobody else looked at him, to be quite honest.
He could do it. He could 100% be a fullback. I heard him on here lobbying to try and get some touches in his interview. That one's above me, right? I'm a defensive line coach. I worry about the D line, so he can take that argument somewhere else. But no, he's a very talented guy. Really, a lot of our group is too. That they're just waiting for that opportunity. Hopefully, this next year gives them that chance.
Absolutely. Is Brock Olivo coming back for the running back coach position?
That is something I'm not aware of right now, to be honest. Okay. I hope Brock comes back, but I think Brock is actually going to be actually saw a report. I think Brock's going to the University of Missouri.
Okay.
To be an analyst there, and that's where he played. That's where his family is. So if that's what he's doing, it was great for him to be a part of our staff, and I learned a lot from him, especially special teams wise. He's a super sharp guy, knows a lot of football. So, yeah.
Former Denver Broncos special teams coordinator, actually,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
He's awesome. Good dude, too. Awesome.
I was just gonna say Adam better go start banging on his door and start campaigning for touches there. But so anyways, we saw several coaches and players ultimately leave for other leagues, but the Stars have had tremendous success bringing back their own free agents, guys who were drafted in the XFL, you know, Channing Stribling, Case Cookus, Dexter Williams, you know, I could go on and on. What was it about the team, the roster, the mentality there that you guys had such success bringing all these guys back?
I can only speak for our team. So I wouldn't say this is a shot at anyone else's, but one thing that I do know that goes a long way with the players is how our staff treats the guys on our roster. And Coach Andrus, Coach Miller, really everyone, right? This is professional football, and these are adults, right? These guys have a ton of other issues and things they got to worry about in their lives outside of just football. We expect them when they're at practice in meetings to be all in on football. And then when we have our stuff done, coach lets them go. We don't have them sitting in meetings for 4 hours, 5 hours a day. We expect them to lock in, do the work, watch the film on their own time when they can. But he's also understanding of family things and other stuff going on. I mean, we had guys that would miss a practice because things would come up in their lives that they had to go take care of. And he's very open to those things. There's you have a kid, right? That might be the only kid that you ever have. Coach wants to make sure that you're at those life events in case it's the only opportunity you have to do those things. So that's one thing is I think they understand the respect level. They know what they're getting from us as a staff. They know what they're getting schematically. I know with the D-line group, I think knowing that we don't really have – I wouldn't say we have starters. We got guys that go out there first. If you want to call it a starter, that's fine. But if you look at the roster or the snap numbers, these guys are playing 50-50, right? Like they're equal snaps across the board. If you're on that active roster, everyone is playing I'd say damn near equal reps. And we do that to get them to play fast. We do that to keep them healthy. And we do that because we have that kind of depth. So I think that's one thing that from a roster standpoint, one of the reasons we're able to keep them together. And then from a staff standpoint, it's, you know, quality of life is a big thing. And again, both Bart and Brad do a phenomenal job of, they expect us as coaches to handle our business and be on top of things, right? You better know what you want to do. You better be watching tape. You better have game plan thoughts. And when your work is done, your work is done. We don't need to be in the meeting rooms till 1 a.m. If it takes you that long to figure out a game plan, you might want to reevaluate how you're doing your game planning and your coaching, because it shouldn't take you 18-hour days, even at this level. So they do a really good job with that. You know, I'm sure other people had opportunities, but for me, as things came up, both Brad and Bart were loyal to me, and this was my opportunity to be loyal back to them. And when you know what you're getting, both as a player and a coach, that goes a long way. And coming back into a scheme is another reason with players. When you leave one scheme, you got to go learn a new one. Well, if you stay in the same scheme, you're going to be able to play faster. You're probably going to have a better understanding of the game, and probably going to help you put up better tape too. So I think all of that factored in to guys wanting to return to the Philadelphia Stars.
Yeah, I like what you said there. I mean, in my time of watching football, over 20 years, there's been one other spring league in my entire lifetime that's made it to season 2. So some of these guys that are playing in this league have never had the opportunity since college to build off of a system in 2 seasons. So I think that's huge for some of these guys. And it's huge for coaches as well to be able to continue their progression as a coach as well. So I got a few more questions for you, and then I'll let you get out of here for the day. I know I'm taking up quite a bit of your time.
You're good.
Obviously, one of the big pieces of news to drop this season was the introduction of 3 more hub cities. So obviously, Philadelphia and Michigan will be splitting Ford Field. So I'm curious, how do you feel about playing your home games in Ford Field in 2023?
You got to be excited, right? You play in a NFL stadium. It's the atmosphere that these guys want to be a part of. So it'll be cool to be there, and then to be in the Ann Arbor hub too, and just being in a different area, slowly getting out to the cities is awesome. Just that one step that helps the league grow. And so, Ford Field's going to be a really cool experience. I'm excited for our guys to get to be a part of that.
Absolutely. So obviously the next big domino to fall this offseason was the draft. We all knew it was coming based on the week 10 game between the Panthers and the Maulers that decided draft seeding. Now we know that the draft will be similar to, say, the CFL draft, in which you're drafting players' rights, but you don't necessarily know if they're going to go to the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, how much have you gotten into the 2023 draft class? And is there any specific method you have to trying to scout players you think will come to the USFL?
I'm not going to give away the secrets now. But no, I've dove headfirst into the scouting thing for this upcoming draft probably a month ago. Was when I really started trying to lock things down. Got a pretty good idea and feel I'm really excited about the guys that I'm going to take if they're available and if the decision comes to take a defensive lineman at any point in the draft. So I think it's a good deal to have this draft, and how teams go about it. That's up to their own thing. Hell, someone can draft Bryce Young if they want, but chances are he's not going to show up in the USFL for probably 10 years, if ever. So there's definitely some strategy that's going to go into this whole thing, but it's fun to be a part of, and you really just getting your feet wet in the scouting aspect of it too, and evaluation.
Absolutely. It's got to be a unique challenge, especially given when the NFL draft takes place. It takes place a couple weeks after your season starts. So I'm sure it's going to be very interesting trying to convince players, hey, if you come play in the USFL, you're going to have a lot better opportunity to latch on in an NFL active roster, or, give yourself an opportunity to have a long professional career versus maybe being on a practice squad once and, disappearing into the sunset.
Getting tape matters 100%. Getting tape matters. So again, I think we're going to see a good number of these 2023s end up at some point in these spring leagues, really in the next few months.
I would agree. And I would firmly encourage any player, if you're hearing any sort of question marks about your draft status, if you're hearing your, potential 6th, 7th round pick, why not entertain an opportunity with the USFL to improve your status within the NFL long term? So definitely don't shut the door on any opportunity, because you never know when you need it. But anyway, my final question for you is fairly simple. Every coach seems to climb the ladder from assistant to position coach to eventually to coordinator, and hopefully eventually head coach. You still haven't had a chance to coordinate a defense quite yet. Is that the next goal on your list, or would you prefer to coordinate an offense? And is head coach also a long-term goal for you?
Yeah, head coach would be a long-term goal. Really, at any level. I think that goes back to what I answered earlier. It's all around life events, right? I think everyone wants to say, "Oh, I want to be a head coach in the NFL." Well, that has its own political stuff going on too, of who you know and timing and all that matters. Sometimes it's not even who you know, but who your dad is too, right? So there's a lot that goes into things of those decisions. For me, the coordinator thing, yeah. I talked to an athletic director this last go around hiring cycle, and there's a head coaching job open. He said, well, you've never been a coordinator. And apparently that has to be a thing to be a head coach, even at lower levels. And he said, I don't think you're ready to make the decisions. You've never been a head coach, yada, yada. And it goes back to, well, you'd never been an athletic director before, right? Like, it goes back to who do you know that is invested in you and took a risk on you. So for me, Bart and Brad, they took a risk on me, and they probably had other guys with better resumes that are out there. So it's all timing and learning from these guys. And I trust that the people I know and the players too, right? The players are a big part of helping you grow too. And I've been around some really good ones that have helped me look really good. And it's more their hard work, their dedication to the game that's really the reason for their success. But, those things will come when they're supposed to happen. You can't force it. And, you just look forward to those opportunities when they come. But in the meantime, you stay grounded and be the best at your position. And in my case right now, it's being the head coach of the defensive line or being the coordinator of the defensive line. And Coach Miller's doing a really good job of giving me input and helping me learn and grow. And that's been the case at every other place I've been to. So when that opportunity comes, I'm excited for it. But until then, just keep being a hell of a D-line coach.
I love that answer. All right, Coach. So before I let you leave, is there anyone you'd like to shout out? And also, if you'd like, tell the fans where they can find you on social media.
No, I think I hit on most of these things. Most of the guys I told you I was going to name drop, and it's just to give recognition to guys that have helped me out. But can't say enough about John Boyer at Oregon State. When I went over there with him at Northern Colorado, that guy knows more football and probably has forgotten more football than I'll ever know. So super intelligent guy that's really helped me grow. Ernest Collins for letting me be a D-line coach at Northern Colorado, having never played defense. He was the head coach at the time, and I said, Coach, full disclosure, I've never played defense. And he said, don't worry, you'll figure it out. So to give me my first full-time job there was unbelievable. Woody Blevins over here at Assumption, top 5 defense in the country. You talk about guys that know defense, and I still call him, see him often too, but I'll call him. And if there's something that I think is an issue and I don't have an answer to it, Woody has an answer, and he has a really easy way to teach it. Trevor Wickery, a guy I lived with for 4 years in Northern Colorado, O-line guy, but really helped me with protections and understanding, IDing the run game and blocking and all that. And then this last go around at Holy Cross, before I jumped over, Bob Chesney, Chris Smith, Justin Roper, all those guys gave me a ton of tools and helped me grow as a coach. So can't thank those guys enough. And lastly, Bill Beatty, my high school coach, just retired from Tumwater High School, but he was the head coach at Olympia High School for a long time. So all of those guys, and obviously forgetting multiple others, the list goes on. Can't thank all the players enough that I've had up until this point, and then our current roster too. Really excited to get back to work with them and this staff.
Absolutely. Also, congratulations to Coach Betty, who just retired. I meant to mention that somewhere in here, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Coach. I really appreciate it. I really think you guys have the makings of another championship squad. And as you know, history is kind of on the line in 2023 with you guys making 4 straight championship games in the USFL. So hopefully we can make it 5 for the Stars in 2023. And I wish you the best of luck.
Appreciate it, Sam.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, and enjoy the football on TV later on today.
Will do. Have a good one.
You as well. All right, everybody. So once again, that was Coach Brandon Maguire, the defensive line coach for your Philadelphia Stars of the USFL. Again, if you have not done so already, make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribe to help us grow this platform for future coaches, players, and executives that have come on here. You got to keep in mind that each and every one of these guys is doing us a favor by coming on. So hitting that like button and getting them in front of more viewers is incredibly important, because that's the whole reason a lot of these players ultimately come on. They need the exposure to help them get where they're going in their professional career. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys with a quick promotional commercial about our network. If this is the first time you're watching, you definitely want to check this out, and it'll give you a little bit better rundown on what we do, because it's not just interviews all the time.
This is Brett, and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man. I just had a workout with the Cincinnati Bengals. Signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in. The Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
And then we got Lions wide receiver Williams is debuting this week as a starter. That's something to look at as far as the eye test goes. And then another one on the eye test is Mostert might be coming back to Miami. And we can see if he has a role in this offense and see if he can be viable for the next couple weeks coming and help us in the playoffs and possibly towards a championship. That would be very nice, because he's sitting on my bench right now.